Is this on?
I think so.
Let's start.
All right, let's.
This is Cinema Crudités.
Yes.
Sort of a series of short shows where we talk about things that maybe aren't going to make it on the main show, but they're still films that I want to talk about. In the spirit of craft to services and looking at movies that, didn't get a fair shake or maybe are just kind of unknown, like generally in the film sort of industry or whatever. That's kind of what I want to do with these smaller shows, is talk about stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I want to talk about a film today, but first I guess I should introduce myself. People should know that I'm Aaron Coker, the host of the Craft to Services podcast, and I'm joined today by a special guest.
Hi, my name is Diane Blumenfeld.
Yeah. What do you do?
I'm a co-host of Just Enough Trope.
Where is that available?
At the Just Enough Trope network at justenoughtrope.com.
Oh, cool.
And
what happens on that show?
We talk about comic books, movies, TV shows, and of the nerdy variety. We talk about news as well.
What's something you've talked about recently, and what's something you're talking about in the future?
Well, recently we talked about James Bond. We covered a couple of movies of his, like he's a real person.
Yeah, his output has definitely declined.
Yeah, I know,
recent
right?
Years.
But number 25 coming up.
Yeah.
And in the future, we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like
and
the 2002 or 3 film, Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, we may talk about that a little bit, but we're going to talk more about like the role-playing game and the cartoon, actually, like the first episode of the cartoon.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Like the Saturday morning cartoon show.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, people should check that out at justenoughtrope.com. We're here today to talk about a film that I was turned on to by John Murray of the Trilon Cinema in Minneapolis because we were talking about a film called The Traveling Executioner.
Okay.
And am I right about this? This is a non-research show, so I'm just going to talk about whatever I think is right.
Okay.
So here's the thing about Trump. No, the cinematographer for that film was a guy named Haskell Wexler, who is a name that if you don't know, you should, because he's one of the greatest cinematographers of all time. And he can just eat Deakins' lunch all day, as far as I'm concerned. But he was very successful. He won an Academy Award for like Virginia Woolf, I think.
Okay.
He worked with Mike Nichols a lot. He worked on In the Heat of the Night. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Nice.
So celebrated guy, and got a wild hair up his ass to make a movie. And he's only made 2 movies total.
Sure.
This movie, Medium Cool,
Yep.
from 1969, that we're going to talk about. And then he made another film called Latino in 1985, which
Okay.
was like just a film festival movie.
Okay.
And this was a very limited release as well. I don't think most people haven't heard of this.
No.
Siskel and Ebert did review it. They called it a modern masterpiece, or at least a well-crafted masterpiece.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's one of those films that, it only cost about $600,000. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I think probably just came out in New York and L.A. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even heard of it until John from the Trilon told me about it.
Okay.
And when I heard that Robert Forster and Marianne Hill were in it, I was like, oh, I got to check this out.
Sure.
And it's an experience.
Yeah, it is.
It's intense.
Mm-hmm.
Can you try to give the audience a sense of what it's about?
Well, Robert Forster plays this guy who's a camera guy for a local news outlet in Chicago. And this is Chicago, 1969, summer of 1969. 68. I'm sorry. Right on the verge of the Democratic convention there.
Which was a real good time.
Yeah. There were a lot of protests, and the protests got kind of violent.
Kind of.
To say the least. This movie just starts out kind of being a camera guy and him loving the experience of being a camera guy and, reporting on news and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it kind of starts with it literally starts with them filming an auto accident.
Yes.
dispassionately.
Yes.
I've heard this compared to Nightcrawler, but Nightcrawler should be compared to this because Nightcrawler wouldn't exist without this.
This is true.
And there's a lot of things in this film that I think are way ahead of their time in terms of commentary. But it's partially a commentary on the news society.
Right.
This is before the 24-hour news cycle. But at one point, a character is talking about, you put all this blood and guts on the screen, on the 6 o'clock, the 10 o'clock, and the 12 o'clock news. And he's talking about this exact thing.
Right.
And they're filming this car accident, and there is a lady laying face down coming out of the car.
Yes.
You don't know if she's alive or dead, but they pointedly put in the soundtrack the sounds of like these soft moans that are definitely a woman's voice.
Yes.
And they go, oh, well, we got the film. Well, I guess we should call an ambulance.
I know.
And they call an ambulance, yeah. So it's definitely a criticism. And then it cuts right to like this cocktail party.
Yep.
We're never really given a total background, but you get the idea that there are definitely news people there, but there are also people who maybe work for, I don't know, maybe they work for like advocacy groups or something.
Right.
But there's like a friendly, somewhat heated discussion about the rights and responsibilities of journalists and photojournalists, as they do what they do. Yeah. But that's where we come in with Robert Forster, and he's like, hey, I just take the pictures, pal.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's got his sound guy, who's a buddy of his.
Who's played by Peter Boners, who was probably best known for being on the Bob Newhart show.
Okay.
I think.
All right. I have no idea.
That's all we got. I think he's on Bob Newhart. Anyway.
Okay. And it's about them kind of just doing almost guerrilla type work and sometimes, to get the story and everything.
Is he a hippie?
I don't think he would identify as a hippie, no.
But he seems kind of sympathetic.
He does seem sympathetic to the hippies.
Causes. This is 1968.
Yeah.
This is 1968, so like hippies are so mainstream now that you can have a song in the film where the guy's like, I am a hippie.
I know.
I'm going to smoke a lot of grass. I'm going to go ask the mayor where Ashbury Street is.
Ashbury is. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Like the cynicism, hippies are cynical at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
They go to a dance party and that's playing. It's just kind of like, okay. And it's kind of psychedelic and out of sight because
I think those are lyrics from the song.
Yeah.
It's psychedelic and out of sight.
Because they're lights flashing.
I love this R. Crumb cartoon.
Yeah, it's kind of an intense dance party.
Yeah. And he's like, the whole thing is a merger of scripted footage and real life documentary footage.
Yes.
That's really like, because when you get right down to it, the plot is barely there. It's almost non-existent. And I think some of the acting by the principals is great.
Yep.
The acting by some of the side characters is like not awesome.
Right.
And it's this combination of stuff. And as the story goes on, he kind of gets involved, or at least he starts to question his impartiality as a cameraman. And there's a plot point specifically in the thing where he's going around talking to, there's a side plot where he goes and talks to this guy who's a cab driver.
Yep.
And he's a black man.
Yep.
And he has to go to like the ghetto, to talk to him.
Right.
And he gets in there and he's talking to the guy and he's saying, okay, so this cab driver, you found $10,000 and you turned it in because you wanted to be like an honest, upstanding guy. And the police gave you a bunch of trouble about it.
Yep.
Because like, well, was it $20,000? Like, where's the rest of the money?
Right.
And so he's trying to get this guy, apropos of nothing, he just thinks this would be a good human interest story. It's like his journalistic instincts. But his boss doesn't want him to do it. And even the guy, the cab driver is like, I don't want to talk to anybody else. It's made my life hell already.
Right.
And then as he's trying to leave, our character, Casellas, the Robert Forster's character, gets like sidetracked, like high-roaded by all the other guys who are there in the apartment, like wearing dashikis, and they all want to talk to him about like, the way the white news media covers the news, and it's like you just see us, I'm a human interest story, but you don't care that like me and people like me are dying all over the place.
Right.
And it gets kind of pointed, like, at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So as Wexler clearly, like, wanted to tell a story about, journalism.
Right.
Or at least journalism in the face of this. What I think is really funny, and like I said, we're not doing any, like, research, so I don't really know the background. There's a documentary called Look Out, Haskell, It's Real.
Yeah.
Which is based on a real incident where Haskell almost got hit by a tear gas canister during the riots.
Right.
That I haven't watched yet, but I'm going to watch it.
Okay.
If we end up talking about this movie again on the show, I'll have more to say. But I know that Wexler had planned to do this thing that was kind of like an indictment, or at least a look at the news media in this time of, troubles in America.
Right.
And so he thought, we'll shoot at the convention because there'll be some protests. That'll be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought, we'll get this great, stuff. Maybe we'll have to change the story, or the story will be influenced by what's going on.
Right.
Well, little did he know that he would end up filming one of the most violent, like turbulent, like riot actions in American history, the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Right.
Which, of course, was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And the National Guard was there, and it was nuts.
Yeah.
And so we get into a situation where it's gold. Like, wow, we got some good stuff for our movie.
Right.
But also, are we and our actors going to emerge alive from this?
Right.
Or will we be dead or in jail by the end of this?
Right.
And for me, it's like an amazing accomplishment. You have to give it to Verna Fields, who is the editor for this, to take the chaos, not only of what you're capturing, but just think of the chaotic nature of having to shoot this.
Right.
And we see in the film, a big part of it is they were allowed to do this to beat the hell out of these protesters who, to be honest, you see them in the film, a lot of them are just, I'm just wearing a costume. It's like shitty Comic-Con.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like
Right.
people who come dressed in like, oh, take this, pigs, kind of thing. The cops, and we see thousands of cops.
Yes, we do.
And the National Guard push all the cameras out, and the cameras leave, and they're like, wait a minute, don't leave, film this.
Right.
The whole world is supposed to be watching this.
Right.
And they get rid of all the cameras and then just start beating the shit out of all these people.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, how did Haskell get to keep all of his stuff? How did he get to film all this stuff?
Yeah.
So you're probably in a situation where you're filming and it's like, oh, here they come, and then like put it away. You're getting jostled in groups. You're running around, taking
Right.
all that footage and then integrating with the scripted stuff that they knew that they were going to do before.
Right.
This is why it's a masterpiece.
Right.
Like, this is why it's on this show, because I think that not enough people know about this.
Mm-hmm. It the riots are very intense, and the fact that it's real just makes it more intense and more. It makes you nervous for the actors.
Yeah.
And
what's Verna Bloom plays this single mother that
yes.
Casellas sort of. It's probably like my one criticism of the film. You don't really know why the story side of it isn't developed enough for me to really believe or understand why he's
Interested in her?
because he has like he's nailing like Mariana Hill.
I know.
And presumably like other, he's got a swinging
Yeah.
kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, I like this single mother from West Virginia.
Right.
I'm going to focus in on this.
I know.
And also she doesn't like to put out. So I'm going to go with this.
I know.
And I think it's supposed to be part of his sort of like cultural or like sociological awakening,
Okay.
where he's this kind of like.
Where he sees other people in different kinds of
Yeah,
life
right.
and
Because he's
everything.
like, I could just take Mariana Hill to the roller derby, or I want to do something, but I'm going to do something by doing something or someone.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Which leads me into talking about the amazing performance by Harold Blankenship, the boy in this.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Wexler had planned on doing was filming the white poor in Chicago. I mean, he wanted to film the black poor as well.
Right.
But he had adapted this book, or he had basically convinced Paramount to let him adapt this book that had been popular the year before, which, no research, I can't remember what it's called, but it doesn't matter. And it was about like a journalist befriending this poor white kid in the slums of Chicago. And remember,
Sure.
this is the mid-'60s in Chicago, so now everything is Millennium Park this and the North Loop that.
Right.
And there's very, urbanization has pushed or gentrification has pushed a lot of things out. The Tokyo Hotel is gone
Right.
from the North Loop now.
Yeah.
But back then, it was only like a couple streets away from City Hall.
Yep.
People were like literally raising chickens and things like that.
Right.
And so this book is about this journalist checking that out. Well, he took that as the skeleton of the story, sold it to Paramount. They're like, sure, here's $600,000. And he's like, now I'm going to make my convention film.
Right.
But we follow like this kid and his mother, and the kid was a real kid. He was a real kid who lived in the Chicago slums.
Yep.
I don't know if Wexler just auditioned slum kids or what.
I don't
But they
know.
found this real like 12-year-old kid who is completely, he is the character in the film. He's named Harold. The kid's name is Harold.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't feel like an actor.
Right.
Which is good, because Haley Joel Osment would have strangled the life out of like a role like this. He's just this dirty kid who's like playing with pigeons, and like you totally believe it. And the real story is, once this was over, they're like, okay, I'm sure they paid him and his family. The kid went back to living in the slums of Chicago, and that was it.
Right.
We never heard from him again.
Right.
And this guy that did this documentary like 10 or 15 years ago, like tracked him down, and he was living in West Virginia. Like he went back to West Virginia and had a family and all that. And
Okay, sure.
yeah, so I don't know if he raised pigeons still, but it's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, he was almost too dirty, if you ask me.
Yeah, they wanted you to know that this kid was dirty.
Like, he had dirt all up and down his arms, on his face. It's like, okay, is that from playing with a bird?
I thought the coal mines were in West Virginia.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, like, what are you doing? Are you rubbing the bird on your face? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. That's a dirty bird.
Yeah, it's a dirty bird. I mean, pigeons are dirty birds, but yeah, and then he had like this basket that he kept the pigeon in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes he would capture a pigeon and he'd let it go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, other times he would like keep the pigeon like on the rooftop of their building.
Yeah. There definitely wasn't a pigeon in there if they weren't, doing an insert of somebody taking a pigeon out of the basket.
Right.
Because sometimes he or Robert Forster would just kind of throw the basket down.
I know.
And you're like, ooh.
You're like a little worried about
I'm
that
sure there's
pigeon
not a bird
in there.
Yeah. It's fine.
I know. A little careless with that basket.
What's in the basket?
Yeah.
Dinner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was a little miffed by the ending of this film, though.
Oh, we're gonna go right to the end.
Well, I don't know. The convention stuff was good. And the riots on the outside of them.
Yeah, they had footage, from the convention itself.
Yeah.
And they included the part where, the delegates are voting for who's going to be the candidate and everything.
Yeah.
And then at one point somebody comes up and they're like, does Mayor Daley want to talk about the fact that the army is on the streets of Chicago hitting people with truncheons?
Right.
And whoever the person in charge is like, we're not taking any questions about that. You're just supposed to come up and say who the delegates are voting for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think people were kind of mad at Daley after that.
He did a really bad job.
Yeah.
I think history has judged him for that.
Yeah. He didn't really get very far. I mean, he wasn't, after he was mayor, what did he end up doing?
We don't have to get into that.
Okay. All right.
Known for not being good in this situation.
Okay. Fair enough.
And there's also things, too, that there's no way that they could have planned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're optioning this book, it's late 67, early 68, and you're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We know where the convention's going to be. We're going to shoot this there.
Yep.
It'll be rough, but, we'll get some good stuff, have some crews out there. At one point, JFK is already dead, right?
Yeah.
So we'll do a interview in front of a campaign office for Bobby Kennedy.
Yep.
And talk to some kids. And they talk to the kids, and they're literally kids. Like, they're talking to volunteers that are like 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And Robert Forster starts off the interview. He's like, "Okay, who can vote here?" as a joke. But then immediately, they're all talking about like, "Oh, we like his hair. Like, he's so hot." And then there's a guy who is clearly an actor. This is kind of my problem with some of the side actors, is that you've got the verisimilitude of like real people.
Yep.
And then you bring an actor in, and Forster's great because I think the whole sort of Strasberg school of like natural acting is up and running in art films at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the extras are like, well, let me tell you, see, I'm
Right.
a real hot spur, Spitfire revolutionary. I want to tell you about what's going on in Vietnam.
Right.
And it's like, all right, dude, come on.
I know.
But yeah, so they've got a guy like that. Now, while they were planning this, they couldn't have known what was going to happen in a kitchen
Yep.
to Robert Kennedy, right?
Right.
So then when that happens and you're like, find a kitchen,
Yep.
book a kitchen somewhere
Yep.
real fast.
Yep.
And they'd have this really well done scene. I think that's real subtle, but is very powerful just because of the reality of the events where they just do like a circular pan around this kitchen where everybody's working and stuff.
Yep.
And in the background, you hear the noise of the rally that
Yep.
RFK was at.
Yep.
And the scene ends with this door busting open and, a bunch of people all filing in to go out through the back of the kitchen.
Right.
And we cut away
Yep.
to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we cut away to DC and all the cameras are getting set up because of the funeral.
Yeah.
Basically, for RFK's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And Casellas is like, his reaction is not like, wow, what a sad thing. It's like, look at these guys. They're setting up so fast.
Yeah.
They had all that practice when JFK died.
Yeah.
He's looking at it purely from a professional perspective.
I know. And like they've got camera 1, camera 2.
Yeah.
All sort of set up. I thought it was interesting the beginning of this. You made sure that I understood too that they were
This was amazing.
filming some they were I don't know, were they
It was National Guard
it was the National Guard
training.
and they were, I guess, volunteers.
And so I don't know the background of this because this is one of those half genius, half the coincidence of all time type things.
Right.
But if he's going to if he knows that the National Guard could come out, because after what happened, I don't think they would have said, yeah, sure, you can film us.
Right.
After this happened, right?
Right.
He must have known the National Guard will be on
Call
site.
or what have
And
you.
yeah. And so I want to show them training and getting ready for what's going to happen. And so he films Robert Forster filming a training exercise of the National Guard. Mm-hmm. And what I thought was so ironic and so amazing, and I don't usually talk during movies, but I did lean over and explain to you so you got what was going on, is that you see a training exercise. So it's like you take shirts and skins, basically. You take all the National Guard people on your base and you go, okay, this half, you go do your jobs.
Yep.
This half, go home, put on a fright wig and and a wife beater or whatever. And you're going to pretend to be the whacked out hippies. They're going to be causing trouble.
Right.
And so they did that. And so you see, 5-10 minutes of this exercise where a bunch of people are like all singing "We Will Overcome," but they're all like buff white dudes.
Yes.
Which is not what you see later on at Shitty Comic-Con. So I just thought the symmetry of that was amazing. You see this fake protest, and there's this funny but like darkly funny thing where they're pretending to do a sit-in.
Yep.
And then somebody comes out and goes, the guy, pretend mayor comes out and he's like, we've made sure that liquor is very cheap for you. And all these like just sarcastic sort of things that they're saying. Just to see how they view the people that they are there to protect and keep from hurting themselves. They don't see it that way.
Right.
And then we see what they're going to do, and they like practice beating the crap out of people.
Right.
And one amazing shot is you see the Jeeps that have like the wire, like the barbed wire on front in the exercise, and we see them deployed on the streets of Chicago for real in the documentary footage at the end.
Yes. I know. It's intense stuff.
Where's the Oscar?
Yeah, I know, right?
Where is it?
It's nowhere to be found, unfortunately.
That's why this show exists.
That's right.
Siskel and Ebert both gave it thumbs up. Vincent Canby for the New York Times said that it's an angry, technically brilliant movie that uses some of the real events of last year, the way that other movies use real places as the backgrounds for the characters.
Sure.
Which it does. I think he missed the point that it doesn't matter. I mean, like we said, if you look at it, some of the acting's not great. The story is super thin, but So, but it's not there for that.
Right.
If there hadn't been a giant blow up at the convention, this would have been just, oh, it's a fun exercise. Interesting.
Right.
It wouldn't have been this amazing snapshot of the time that it was. There's actually another film. It's a Canadian film called Prologue that I actually haven't seen, but I want to now after seeing this. That came out in 1970 that also uses footage. I think a lot of people knew that something was going to happen at this thing.
Sure.
So they also use footage, and I'm not sure that they shot this footage. I think they maybe just took stock footage and then set their movie at the convention.
Okay, sure.
I don't know. We'll see.
All right.
Because I'm going to watch it.
Right.
And come back. Robert Forster is great in this. I sometimes call him like the Elliot Gould of the 60s.
I get it.
Because he's that guy that's like, I want to be that guy.
Right.
I mean, he's okay looking. He's not like super good looking, but he's not medium cool. He's large cool.
Right.
Like he's the one who's like kind of figuring stuff out, but like you like want to go with him, and he's just charismatic, and he's like that dude's my guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He's great in this. Verna Bloom as the West Virginia
single
mom
mother.
is. What, do you think she was good?
I thought she was good. Yeah. I thought it was believable when she was looking for Harold. I mean,
Jason.
Of course, yeah. Well, of course, her kid like decides to run away the night before the Democratic convention.
Yeah.
So good timing there, kid.
Just the bravery alone of her being game enough to.
I know.
Crazy Haskell's probably got what there was no Steadicam back then, or at least it was in its very early stages.
Right.
He's got a camera, and he's probably just like, go walk through that riot, or go walk along that line of cops and look confused. If she was really a good actress and looking confused, there must be plenty of cut footage of somebody coming up to her and going, "Are you okay, ma'am? Like, do you need to?"
Right.
But instead, she just, like the little girl in Schindler's List, she just kind of walks unscathed through all this stuff.
Yeah, and she's wearing a very identifiable, like bright yellow dress.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Do you know that John Cassavetes was supposed to play Casellas?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Which is why his name is Casellas.
Really?
It was originally going to be very sort of weird and verite. He was going to be playing a character named John Cassavetes, and it was to be John Cassavetes.
Oh my gosh!
But he had to drop out and do something else, and so they got Robert Forster and changed it to John Cassavetes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, he gets fired at one point, and I'm not entirely sure why he gets fired.
He gets fired because, and this is a plot point that I think we had talked about this before, if this was like a studio movie, and technically it is, but if this was like a mainstream movie, this would be the whole plot. We'd be following this guy. He's our white, WASP hero.
Right.
And he's like, maybe the black people aren't so bad. And that's his arc in the film.
Right.
Because at the beginning of the film, he's divorced from the morality of his actions or inaction, as long as he knows that the organization, or the institution of journalism backs him up and is also impartial.
Right.
He is the camera. He holds a camera. He is the camera.
Right.
And a lot of the hippies, are worried about the fact that they think that news organizations are working with the FBI. If he's just walking around shooting B-roll, he thinks that they're giving it to like the feds, so the feds can watch it and like find the faces of like, instigators.
Sure.
And he's like, that's not a thing. Later in the movie, he learns that his TV station is doing that exact thing.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't even make a stink. Like immediately he's fired.
Yeah.
Like simultaneously with him finding that out, which is a little abrupt.
Yeah, it is.
And then, like I said, like that would be the midpoint of a mainstream movie. Then he would he's uncovered a bigger conspiracy.
Right.
We've got to figure this out. And at the end, it's like, I know you did it. No, don't jump. And,
right.
But instead, that plot line disappears because we got a riot to get to.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he gets a new job being a film guy for some other news station, I guess. He's filming at the Democratic convention.
Yeah, instead of having a job, he's just working for hire, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the single mom, she finds him there eventually.
Yeah.
However implausible that is. But
it's a little bit implausible.
Yeah.
I did like the fact that, so she's walking through all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And she gets to, and this must have been a real line, So here, this is what I've wondered about this film. You have a plan. Let's get some of these shots. We know a lot of it will be chaotic, and we'll just put it together later. Mm-hmm. Then it's like, whoa, that was specifically really bad.
Yeah.
You can always, a week or two later in Chicago, after they've washed the blood off the streets, you can always come back and shoot pickups, right?
Right.
So do you hire some people to wear army costumes? Like there's a point where she goes through a military checkpoint, and I'm like, that's a real military checkpoint.
Yeah.
But does she get through because she's white, she's in a nice dress, because of like this passing privilege that she has?
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because all she has to do is go up to the guy who has a gun.
Yep.
And we don't see what she says, but you assume she says something like, I need to talk to my boyfriend. He's working in the convention. And the guy's like, you're a white lady. It's fine. And just waves her through.
Yeah.
And that tells you everything you need to know.
I know.
And then there's that great long shot where they just drive. Now they're through the cordon. They're in the green zone, basically. And they just drive past Jeeps and tracked vehicles and fences, and you see in the background marble columns. We're in like the Capitol building, the judicial building. We're in like the nice part of town where they didn't let anybody go. Nobody's coming in here. That's where the army is. Yeah.
I know.
It's like going to the center of Mordor.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at one point they got like redirected because like I think some of the cops or the National Guard were blocking off a street, and they were like, "All right, let's go this way. Come on, everybody."
Oh yeah, when they're marching.
Yeah,
yeah, and because it's following a whole and the people. It's funny because you see hippie dudes.
Yep.
You see like Stokely Carmichael type figures, and then behind. I don't know if these people are real or not. That's what you don't know in this film. Behind Vernon Bloom's character, you see a guy and a girl. They're holding hands and they're smiling. And the guy's wearing he's got boat shoes or like sneakers and like shorts on. And he's got like a sweater. He looks like he's going to the club.
Yes.
For some tennis.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like now, you'd have a lot of different people at a protest.
Yeah.
You'd have people who made a lot of flyers, and people who were saw about it on Facebook and came down and went, "Hey, what's going on? Yeah, I don't like this either.
Yeah, I'll march.
Let me put my sunglasses away. I don't want to get them to get scratched."
Right.
And so we're following these people, and that's when it starts to get really real because they're going down the street and it's blocked off, and then the organizer's like, "State Street, we're going to State Street.
Right.
Careful, stay together, everyone."
Right.
And then at some point, something happens that we don't see because it's focusing on Vernon Bloom. But he's like, "Okay, everybody get down. And suddenly everybody gets down and you're like, what is happening?
Right.
This seems really bad.
Yeah. I know. And then at one point they focused in on this one kid who has like a bloody nose and his face around his eyes kind of bleeding. He's holding something up against his face.
Yeah.
And he kind of takes it away and you see that he's kind of bloody.
Yeah.
And when they have the benches and they're kind of like using them as barricades and weapons and they're all piled up on top of each other.
That's why I have to give it to Vernon Bloom because, I used to be an actor and I've been in situations where it's like, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but keep going. But
right.
They're making the benches into barricades. I'm out.
Exactly. Exactly.
She kept going.
She did keep going. And then she finds Casellas and they get in his car and then they're driving down the street that doesn't have any traffic whatsoever. And for some reason, he runs into a tree and then they're both dead somehow.
Yep. Well, she's dead. He's badly wounded.
Yeah. And the movie just kind of ends, and then there's this car.
It doesn't just end.
There's this car that passes, and they take pictures, kind of like him at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you see this guy with this camera.
It cuts to a camera stand.
Yeah.
With Haskell Wexler on it.
Yeah.
Wexler.
Yeah.
And
he's filming it.
And it zooms into his lens.
Yes.
While they chant "The whole world is watching."
Yes.
I don't know if you get it. Yeah, there are some parts that are maybe in 1969 that was okay. Now that's it should have just zoomed in on his nose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
know what you mean. Yep.
And those are some detractions. Now, as an artifact, as just a work of art and a capture, a snapshot of a time, this is incomparable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there are some great artistic touches and there are some weak artistic touches.
Yeah.
He does this thing where he keeps trying to do these. He has like almost every scene transition is some kind of match cut where like they'll be letting a pigeon go.
Right.
The little dirty boy is letting a pigeon go.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to a poster of Ringo Starr with a dove hanging in Casellas's loft apartment. You know, because he's down.
Right.
He doesn't like the man.
Right.
And they're just totally different things. That's really on the nose, but it's also kind of works at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to pull out what are the sort of theme and plot elements that are kind of amateurish from a guy who's never directed his own film before.
Right.
But there's also things that really work, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little on the nose to have the merry-go-round. We're going on a merry-go-round. And we're just filming roller derby footage of people beating the crap out of each other.
Yep.
But it's like this fake violence.
Right.
And Wexler loves his symmetry. You know, you pointed out like the car accident at the beginning, the car accident at the end.
Yep.
The training at the beginning, the real ride at the end.
Yeah.
So he's already getting us ready for this violence, which is a fake violence, you know, in this sort of gladiatorial entertainment thing that we'll see later. Mm-hmm. But merry-go-round, yeah, okay. There's Frank Zappa's got music in this, and there's a lot of like kind of freak out kind of music, which was just what you do for the time.
Right.
But there's also a part where, I don't know if this is good or not, but like he's Casellas and Ruth is her character name, I think, the Marianne Hill character, are hanging out in his apartment. And they don't make any explicit references, but they're stoned, right?
Yeah, probably.
They're stoned, or like she's ripped because they're having this argument, or we're having the tail end of an argument that's clearly about. I don't know why she would bring this up because she just seems like a good time girl,
right?
But they're talking about journalistic responsibility because she's talking about this movie that they saw, and in the movie, like documentary, it's like pictures. They're taking pictures of these turtles. And the turtles, because of the bomb tests in the Pacific, have lost their sense of direction. And so the turtles are going inland instead of out to sea.
To lay their eggs.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she's like saying, you know, because she's a girl and she likes little baby turtles. She's like, are you saying that like you wouldn't help the turtles? Or even just get the film and as soon as you're done shooting,
turn them
pick
around.
up the turtles and like send them back to the sea? And he's like, I don't care about that sort of thing. Right. It happened. I'm just taking the pictures.
Right.
And she's getting like kind of mad at him. And then she like reads this article from like a science journal or something like that. And she screws up some of the words. Mm-hmm. She says like, you know, propensively or something like that.
Right.
And I thought it was like, oh, that's a really good, like subtle, like she's a pretty good actress.
Yeah.
That's like a subtle thing to show you that like, all right, they're not like 100%. Like this is the tail end of like a fun night or something like that. And then they chase each other around the apartment naked.
Yeah, of course.
Which, this is 1969, and this is a mainstream film by Paramount Pictures, and there's full frontal nudity from both a man and a woman. Like this is, I don't have the history books with me, but that's, you know, that was pushing the envelope.
Yeah, it was, for sure.
And this originally got an X rating.
Oh, really?
From the MPAA, yeah.
Huh. Wow. For that scene, huh?
No, it was for its subversive political ideas.
Oh, I guess.
Wasn't it? But you can say, if I see pubic hair, it's an X. But what I'm really trying to do is, you know, keep this subversive political stuff out of the MPAA sucks. And that's a whole nother podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
This podcast is not yet rated. I think you just saw the birth of something.
I think so.
Anything else you want to say about this film?
I don't know. I really enjoyed seeing the riots and stuff like that because it's such a piece of history, and knowing that they were actually going on right then. This wasn't recreated.
Yeah.
I think makes this film really powerful.
Yeah. Canby said that. Well, actually, he said specifically that it was an awkward and pretentious movie.
Okay.
Which I cannot disagree with. I think that we have just said that here today.
Yeah.
But it has an importance that goes beyond the book that it's based on or any kind of, you know, theme or anything like that. Like, it's just what it captured. Mm-hmm. And he compared it to Guernica.
What is Guernica?
Guernica is that giant painting by Pablo Picasso of the bombing of Guernica by
Okay.
Franco in the 30s.
Okay.
And it's like that. You'd know it if you saw it. It's like almost black and white. It's almost like, and it's like there's eyeballs and there's a lady going, and she's holding her baby.
Okay.
And it's like, it's a condemnation of the fascists killing people.
Sure.
In Spain, and it's very controversial. I don't know why. It's awful, but this really happened.
Right.
We need to know about this.
Right.
And that's, I think that's an apt comparison, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Can you remake Medium Cool? I want to.
Oh, boy.
So what is it? Like Charlotte? Is Charlotte where the RNC is going to be
I don't know.
in 2020?
Maybe.
You go to Charlotte, something's going to happen.
Right.
You channel a little Wexler here.
Right.
You get but this time, you focus on the 24-hour news cycle and digital journalism and citizen journalism too.
Sure.
And you make the whole thing a found footage thing, or like not all of it, but like the riot scenes.
Yeah.
And you just get a dozen people, give them 10 cell phones each.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get taken away or broken.
Yep.
And everybody upload everything to the cloud.
Yep.
So you don't lose the footage, and just film what happens.
I suppose you could do that. I don't know.
The kid has to be a real minority kid, though, this time, right?
Right.
Yeah, you can't.
I think so.
Not going to be any West Virginia little kid.
No.
Not in North Carolina.
I think I don't know. It's kind of up in the air whether or not you're going to capture riots the way this film did.
There's going to be riots.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's funny because we live in Minneapolis, and what was it? I don't remember when it was. Whatever the last election was. No, it was 2008.
Okay.
The one where John McCain didn't win.
Right.
The RNC was here.
Right.
And I remember seeing at the time, there were people who were like, because, we're like the Seattle of the Midwest. We have
Right.
a lot of like lefty people.
Yep.
And there are a lot of people like, we're going to protest, we're going to do this. And Facebook, hey, join this group. Remember, we're going to go here at this time and protest and stuff.
Right.
And then I remember seeing in the news, like 100 people, like the night before the convention, were arrested.
Oh, really?
Yep. The cops just busted down people's doors, just arrested people for what? I don't know what the charges were. Probably were none.
Thinking about protesting?
Well, you can hold somebody for 72 hours, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
And in 72 hours, what will be over?
The convention.
Convention. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they might just do something like that.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then again, you've got people coming from all over. You don't know what they're doing. Somebody wants
That's true.
to drive to North Carolina. Who knows?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. So you think that they can redo this?
I think somebody should.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, you could call it extra cool, or it didn't have to be medium cool specifically, but a medium cool style film
Sure.
with a better story.
Better story.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And Robert Forster's still alive.
Yeah.
So cameo for him in some capacity.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Peter Boyle's in this.
Yeah.
For like 10
which
seconds.
is crazy.
Yeah. He plays he brings some much needed levity, but if that wasn't so, I'd be like, tone it down.
Yeah.
Come on, funny man.
Right.
Because his character's like kind of jokey and funny.
Yep.
Do we even talk about how prescient this film is about so many issues?
I don't know. If we
The
did
idea
that.
of the responsibility of journalists.
Right.
This is more about journalists, inadvertently working against things that they're reporting on and
Right.
impartiality. But impartiality in journalism is a huge thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
The police state,
Yep.
mobilizing people whose salaries we pay for, essentially the cops, the army,
Right.
being used to silence people and silence free speech. Take a little trip to the gun range,
Right.
and about how like it's your right to own a gun,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Wexler subtly puts in things like you go to the gun range, who's there?
Ladies.
It's all women,
Yeah. White
all
ladies.
beehived women, white women,
Yep.
shooting dirty hairy guns.
Yep.
Because they're they're worried.
They're scared.
And then you have a thing that isn't so great, not great, but isn't so subtle, where he goes to the apartment with all the black guys,
Yeah.
and they're just gonna They just talk to the camera.
Yeah.
As if, and I don't think that I think Robert Forster, they come up and they're like, hey, we want to talk to you about this. And he's like, I got to go. I got a lot to do.
Right.
And I don't think that he doesn't want to talk to them necessarily. I think he really is as neutral as he wants to be. But his denial of them being heard triggers them because their whole argument is no one will listen to us.
Right.
And whether or not you have time, you're going to listen to us.
Right.
And then he's not a guy, you can't push this guy around. Like, he knows who he is. He's like, this isn't about that. I just have to go. I have a lot of things I got to do. Mm-hmm. And then they cut to a couple different guys like talking directly to the camera. And that one last speech, which I kind of want to do for a monologue if I ever do auditions again, except I can't because I'm white. The guy gives a really good speech that is not very real. It doesn't feel like a documentary, but it's almost this Martin Luther King-esque type speech. Like, he's very persuasive, and he's clear that he's passionate about this.
Right.
I don't think that Casellas hung around for that. I think this is just a hypothetical situation. What these guys would say if he had brought a camera and a sound man.
Sure.
Because the image, the scene that you see is that they sit him down and then they go through a parade of like, well, I'm a black actress and she's going to talk and then everybody's going to talk.
Right.
I don't think that really happened. I think he got out of there.
Okay.
but this is what you would have seen because Wexler wants to give those people who don't have a voice a chance to say something.
Okay.
And then later on, West Virginia lady is watching the TV and they're doing a retrospective of Martin Luther King.
Yep.
And now we start to see how Casellas is really getting disillusioned because he talks about the script. And this is something else I think that has really become part of our daily life, which is something bad happens. We have a blow off about it. Then we have a thing that we all go, oh, yeah, I remember that. Remember I have a dream, and we all feel better, and we all go back to work on Monday morning. Right. And it's like, that hasn't stopped.
No.
That's still a thing.
Yep.
And make sure the TV says, it's Contempt by Jean-Luc Godard coming up.
Right.
All right. So talk about your influences. That's what people do. I think we covered it, right?
I think
Did
so.
we say just about everything?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we got it.
I think so as well. I like this. This probably turned out almost as long as a regular show, but I like this as a kind of a fill-in feature, talking about movies that maybe nobody's going to pick for an episode, but I definitely think as the curator of this podcast, I want people to know about and hear about. So thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
And,
thanks for having me.
Come up with a similar example.
Sure.
Bring it my way.
All right. Sounds good.
I think that we could definitely do this, but don't make it a Kirsten Dunst movie.
Okay.
If you can.
I'll do my best.
Because you did Drop Dead Gorgeous.
I know I did.
When you were on the show before.
I know.
So anyway, yeah. So thank you, Diane. Thanks the guests for listening. And until next time, keep it real.